Welcome back to the Midweek Breakdown. If there was any question at all, if March Madness has arrived, take a look at this.
Left, and here we go. This is where dreams are made. They're going for it all. Simpson, home run play, the deflection. Oh! .7 seconds left. Alabama State in front.
How do you do all that in less than a second? That's what I'd actually like to know. Welcome back. Good to see you guys. And what a way to start the show. We have the Final Four at the end. That was the first four. In fact, the very first game. And that's how it ended. We're in for a treat this March, guys.
100%.
Madness has begun.
Big time, yes. Oklahoma, a number 9 seed. Dalton, what are the chances of these guys moving past the first round?
I like their chances. I like them a lot. I mean, not to say they couldn't lose. I mean, they're playing the 2-time national champs in UConn, right? And UConn they're really good. They've got a really good guard in Solo Ball who's shooting 42% from 3 on the year, which is crazy at 95 makes. So he's 95 for 117 on the season. He's shooting 80% from the free throw line altogether. But he had one game where he was down in the low 60s, which really took him out. He's a dude that's capable of hitting 4 or 5, or you go back a couple weeks to their DePaul game, he was 7 for 9 from 3. So you got to contain him on the perimeter. You can't let him get going. You don't want him to have a 25-point game against you, especially with emotions like this. And I think a scary thing for Oklahoma in a game like this against UConn, because you know Dan Hurley is known for his antics on the sideline. Like, he's just a crazy dude, always throwing a fit about something. So you're going to have to deal with emotions in this game if you're Oklahoma, because they're going to be running high everywhere. But Connecticut, there's no talk about a three-peat. Right? They haven't been that good this year. They started out the number 3 team in the nation, and then they went to Maui early in the year and lost 3 straight. They did bounce that back with a win over Baylor, a win over Gonzaga. So they're still a good team. They got beat in the semis against Creighton, who's also a tournament team. But without that talk of being on that three-peat, run, there's not as much pressure for Connecticut now. So they can just sit back and breathe and just play. And I think that is a little concerning if you're an Oklahoma fan, just because Oklahoma is going to be tight. Oklahoma hasn't been in the tournament since 2021. And that was the Austin Reeves crew with Brady Manick. You had Alondis, you had Harkless, you had 3 NBA dudes on that roster. Yeah. So, I mean, and they lost first round to Missouri that year with Brady Manick. So the tournament, you just never know what's going to happen, but I really do like their chances. I like the way that Jeremiah Fears has stepped up lately in the way he's played. Unc, I don't know if you've listened much to the radio talk. I have not gotten a clear what to expect from our 5. Is Waggy going to get the start with Northweather continuing to pick up those minutes, or do we expect Sam Godwin back?
Man, everybody's so questionable on Sam Godwin right now. It's a quote-unquote game-time decision, and we know how those work out most of the time. It sounds like Waggy is probably, from what I heard today, it sounded like at this point, Waggy is probably slotted in there. But, man, we could sure use Sam Godwin, that's for sure. Hopefully we're at the point in the season where he's like, look, this is all or nothing. So, and they're willing to put it on the line. He's willing to put it on the line, and we just go with it. But, man, without Sam Godwin, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I almost think that I personally would like to see Sam Godwin come off the bench, because I like the way Waggy's played the last few games without him. I think that there's this freedom that he's played with, knowing that they need him on the floor. So he's been more loose. He's found passers on the pick and roll game. He's not forcing things up. He's finding perimeter shooters, and it's spaced the floor a lot more, just because he's proven to have a little bit of a back to the basket and inside presence, maybe not so much to score, but just to have the ball underneath the rim right there. So I hope that he continues to play with that type of game where he can control the glass, can control the paint, can find our shooters wide, because with Fears, with Miles, with Elvis, with Forsyth, I mean, they're all playing so confident right now with our shooter, and blanking on his name, but shooting the ball like 43% from three. Bryson Goodine. And so the perimeter play is so good for Oklahoma right now. I would not want to see that. I don't want to see him play tight. I want to see him just play relaxed, play free, because they can't look to Florida. That Florida is going to be in that second round game. There's no way Norfolk, there would have to be a miracle for Norfolk State to pull off an upset in round one. I mean, that's only happened once in the history of the game that one seed's gone down. And just for fun history notes, the year the one seed went down, it was Virginia. And the following year, they won the national championship, which I think is just crazy. So they followed it up pretty well. But, yeah, I like Oklahoma's chances to get past UConn in this first round.
So we talked about this a little bit last week, but let me ask you a question. Surely Porter Moser's job is safe right now, right?
Yeah. Porter's job is safe. Doesn't mean we're safe with Porter, right? Like he's going to be courted. I think there's going to be some jobs that are probably catch his eye. Rightfully so. I would have zero hard feelings for the guy for wanting to go to a better basketball situation, because just to do what he did in the SEC, to finish the way he finished in the SEC this year. Big. I mean, he was counted out after starting 0-4 in the SEC.
Yeah, he was counted out 2 months ago.
And so to finish the way he did and to get a 9 seed over some SEC teams, there's 14 teams in the SEC. He finished in the bottom 3 of the SEC.
Yeah. And
he got a seed higher than 4 of the teams that are in the tournament.
How stressed out were you on Sunday when the tournament seeds were coming out?
Dude, when I saw North Carolina and Texas both got in, I was like, okay, so that means that they've discounted Oklahoma at this point. I did not expect to get a 9 seed, not at all.
Yeah. The best I had heard was 10.
Which I would have liked, because I'd much rather have a non-1 seed in the second round. But, I still think Oklahoma finished really strong, and I think they can still get a tournament win and see what happens on Sunday.
You talk about that courtship with the coach. Financially, is it going to be easy for another team to pick up what he's making now?
No, he's under contract for until 2032? Yeah. I mean, it would have to be a pretty big buyout.
Yeah.
I mean,
there is a big buyout there.
That would be expensive for them. But the thing is, in college basketball, if you go to the right place, they're willing to do it. And I think that just looking at what Porter's done in Norman with the resources he's had, the schedule he's had, I mean, I think they did what everybody expected them to do on the road, at Florida, at Auburn, at Alabama. Like, nobody expects you to go in there and compete, right?
Here's the stats. Porter has his contract runs through June 30th of 28.
Oh,
but
wow.
his buyout is $7.65 million.
Still 7.65. So that's a lot.
He's making $3.3 million a year right now.
Yeah. So,
which that money would be nothing if we were talking about football.
Right.
Basketball, a little different story.
Right.
So it really just depends on the school.
Yeah. Yeah, very true.
Dalton, what are your other thoughts about some seeding and stuff in the NCAA tournament? I know I got a text earlier from somebody wearing a red hat and an OU shirt that said, I have something that pisses me off. So we're going to go back to the old segment of what pisses Brandon off, but it's actually going to be what pisses Dalton off. What do you got?
Man, what have we talked about all year long when looking at Oklahoma possibly getting into the tournament? What's been the most important thing for them? Quad 1 wins.
Quad 1s.
Quad 1. And when you look at Joe Lunardi and everything that he puts forth and the net ranking and how we're supposed to be looking at who the best teams are to get the right 68 teams in this field, you take into account more than anything your Quad 1 wins, right? Well, you've got Indiana, who is 4-13 in Quad 1 games. So they've got 4 Quad 1 wins. You've got West Virginia, who is 6-10 in Quad 1 games. And then you've got Ohio State, who was 6-11 in Quad 1 games. None of those teams get in, yet you get North Carolina, who is 1-12 in quad one games, 1-12.
You're good if you need to.
Horrible. They find a way into the tournament. And that's, I mentioned a little bit ago, when I saw that North Carolina went from first 4 out to last 4 in on Selection Sunday, I thought, wow, Oklahoma's getting bumped because there's no way that this North Carolina team deserves a shot. They couldn't even beat Duke without Cooper Flagg. Like that was their chance. I thought that if they beat Duke in the ACC tournament, they're sure in because they're North Carolina. But to go 1-12 and have these teams on the bubble that have multiple quad one wins. I mean, you look at Texas. I think that the committee hit a wall and said, if we're going to let North Carolina in, we have to let Texas in. You can't not. But then I find this out. This is what really pisses me off. And I was texting a little bit about this Sunday with Unc. The AD for North Carolina is Bubba Cunningham. He is the chair of the NCAA committee. So, of course, North Carolina is going to get in. So I just keep reading, and I'm like, okay, this doesn't make sense.
Yep.
His contract.
Or now it makes sense.
Well, it does make sense now.
Yeah.
His contract states that he gets bonuses for NCAA making the tournament.
Wow.
For every single win. So he's got, if they make the Sweet 16, he gets an additional $50,000 on the bonus he's already gotten. If they make it one more game, he gets an additional $75,000. So it's all about him. Where's the integrity at?
Wow.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of hubbub about this, and everybody comes out and says, "Well, when we were talking about North Carolina, we made sure Bubba left the room and he wasn't in on." But he's the freaking chair. You're not going to try to piss him off.
He's coming back to sit down beside you, even if he leaves the room.
Exactly.
What?
It's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
He wasn't there, but he made sure and left his thoughts before he left the room, right?
And I'll draw a funny comparison that we've talked about already. And I heard this comparison on the radio today. The comparison was, well, if the SEC and the Big Ten are running the football playoff, what's to keep them from doing the same thing that Bubba Cunningham did? And, the SEC commissioner and the Big Ten commissioner getting bonuses for the amount of teams that get into the college football playoff. You can't really argue with it because it's pretty much the same thing.
Show me the contract. But because I didn't understand. Well, I didn't know that he had gotten until today. I had no idea that he received bonuses for every win. But when you have people like, Joe Lunardi's been the trusted guy forever. The College Football Playoff Committee doesn't have that yet. You've got maybe Josh Pate, who's trying to step into that type of role for college football. But you don't have somebody like, Joe Lunardi's brought in by everybody. He's the trusted guy, looks at the net ranking, looks at who they're playing, where they're playing, when they're playing them to put these, here's a legit field, but not just, they flopped everything. They did so much. It almost looks like they were just trying to sneak North Carolina in, and they didn't just put North Carolina in. They flipped so much. There was Joe's first 4 in and first 4 out. Or the last 4 in, first 4 out, completely flipped to make sure North Carolina was in the field.
Right.
Unreal.
So teams that had better resumes all season long are not in the tournament. And I'm just like, okay, then I don't care. And he came in and talked on Sunday and said, there's a new formula out for the net and what we're looking for as a committee. Quad one wins mean nothing now. And that would be my argument, Unc, when people want to come in and talk about the SEC or the Big Ten, like fighting to get teams in. Who are you beating? Like, give me the team that you think should be in over this team and show why. Who are you beating? Because North Carolina supposed to be, if you were comparing it to the SEC or the Big Ten in football, would be in one of those conferences if we were talking football, because that's who they are in basketball, right?
Yeah.
They're a blue blood in basketball. Who did they beat?
Nobody.
1-12.
Yeah.
So, like, to me, there's not an argument here when you're talking. There's 68 teams, and this is clear based on quad one ranking where you're supposed to be at. We're not talking 12 teams. We're talking 68 teams. So if you couldn't find yourself in the field without having to have your AD sneak you in so that he can get bonuses in his pocket himself.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And the way that the bracket shapes up, he very well might see himself. I mean, I look at the bracket and I'm like, dang, it's hard to not let North Carolina go to the Sweet 16 in my bracket because of matchups are so important when it comes tourney time. So it's like, I don't know, that it drives me nuts.
It's definitely a root against situation for me. I'm rooting against North Carolina.
That's
because
fair.
Every game.
I agree with you. I don't think they should be in either.
That's fair.
Speaking of brackets, how are you guys feeling about your brackets? You got them all filled out, B?
I do, but it's been really hard for me. I've filled a couple out, or I filled the one I'm filling out twice. I did it, and then I cleared it all, and I did it. It's really hard for me to not have 4 number ones in the Final Four.
Yeah.
And I know there's some really good number 2s in the tournament, but the number 1s in the tournament have just been dominant, with Florida, Auburn, Houston, and Duke, right? Like, especially if, oh, good Lord, I just lost his name. What's the dude for Duke?
Cooper Flag.
Yeah, especially if Cooper Flag is healthy again. To me, there's no reason that Duke can't go all the way with that team with Cooper Flag, but not having anybody besides number 1 seeds in the tournament for me is not normal. But I have all 4 number 1 seeds right now going to the Final Four.
How about you, Dalton?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
Are you?
If I looked at somebody's bracket though, and they had 4 SEC teams in the Final Four, I really couldn't knock it. If you had 2 1s and 2 2s in the SEC, I couldn't knock it because at this point for Duke, I didn't realize how deep Duke was until they won the ACC without Cooper Flag. That was really impressive. So that's why I think I have them in my championship game winning it all. But the SEC's just been so deep this year. And you could argue that there's the top 4 and then there's a drift. There's the next group. Yeah, sure. You could argue that, but that top 4 is legit between Auburn, Florida, Alabama, and Tennessee.
Yeah. They're all 4 really good teams.
So, and then Kentucky's close to there. They're kind of on that edge of that group. And then even some other teams that just show toughness late. Like I would not be surprised to see a Chris Beard team with Ole Miss make an Elite 8 or Final Four run just because he's built on toughness. He's a JUCO guy. He's been at small Division I, making it to, upsetting teams in the NCAA tournament, was really good at Texas Tech, was really good at Texas. And here he is again at Ole Miss, finding himself as a 6th seed in the tournament. I could see Ole Miss finding a way to go deep. The SEC is, I just think they're really good. I really do.
Yeah, I agree.
I didn't fill out a bracket this year. I'm just going to do the daily fantasy on Prize Picks and see if I can't bring home some cheddar.
There you go. Bring home that money.
It didn't work out great in football, but it might be better in basketball because I don't know what the crap I'm picking. So,
well,
I just send it to you guys.
Me and Kelly used to always fill out brackets and go against each other. And she's like, oh, I love this team's colors. And, oh, this team's mascot is really cool. And she would beat me every year.
Cool.
Every year she'd beat me.
I'll hit her up. See what picks on these players.
Right. These colors don't look good. Fun. That team's losing.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm like, shut up.
I don't like his jersey. He's not going to go over. Absolutely. You know what I did get to do is this past weekend I watched the doubleheader of the Oklahoma women's softball taking on the Razorbacks. They had like 45 minutes between 2 games. First game shutout. And man, we've talked about this, that a lot of girls left, a lot of changes. Is this team going to be as good as it was in the past? This is a huge testament to how amazing Oklahoma softball coach is. Patty is just insane to be able to be 26, maybe 27-0 right now while we're talking. There's a game going on, but they already have 54 home runs in 26 games. There were only 122 last year over 66 games. Yeah, we're on track to have way more home runs this season than we did last season.
They actually asked her after the first game, in which we had, I believe, 2 or 3 home runs in that first game shutout. They asked her after the game in the post-game interview, like, do you realize that this team is like 8 home runs ahead of your team last year? That everybody billed as maybe the best college softball team to ever play. And she's like, for real? Like, she didn't even realize it.
She's not keeping track of that stuff. No.
Yeah, she don't care. She's worried about the one run
game,
they did late.
The game in front of her, right? Absolutely, game right now.
I mean, and Arkansas is not a bad football team. We went 7-0
You mean
in the first game. I say football.
Football.
Yeah,
still thinking about football. Yeah,
we know where my brain's at, right? And then
even in March Madness, brain's thinking about football.
The second game was 6-4. Yeah, absolutely. And the third game was a battle. I mean, back and forth. The game on Sunday was a battle. They went up early, then we tied it up, then we held them, and then we went up and they tied it up and they held us, and we ended up winning that game 10-7. But man, I tell you what, they've switched the lineup around a lot, and Ella Parker's actually not playing tonight, who is our big batter, but she's kind of in a slump right now. They asked JT Gasso, who's the hitting coach, about that, obviously Patty's son. They asked him about that it was either one of the pre-games or post-games, and he said, we don't really look at them as slumps. Yes, and this is me talking, not him. Yes, 2 weeks ago, her batting average was 200 points higher than it is right now.
Right.
But saying that, her batting average right now is still 478
with a slump.
In a slump.
Yeah,
that's
so in 2 weeks, in 7 games, she's dropped 200% in her batting average, but she's still getting on base because they walk her a lot. Mm-hmm. She's still scoring, which because they walk her a lot, she's fast. They can steal, and I mean they're ridiculous. The one person that really has stuck out to me is Gabby Garcia, true freshman shortstop, who in the beginning of the year was kind of battling at that shortstop position with Sydney Barker. And Gabby Garcia has been on fire lately. She's had hits in 13 of the last 14 games. She's already hit 9 home runs this year, which her mom was this is what I talked about last week. Her mom was a stud softball player at Arizona State, and her freshman year she had 6 home runs. So they kept talking about that every time Gabby would hit one. Oh, she's 2 from her mom. She's 1.
Didn't this happen last week, Dalton?
It did happen last week
from her mom.
It's the salt water.
Yeah, we're gonna fix the saltwater Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it's the salt water.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you and see you now, but it froze. And while you were there talking, she was 2 away from her mom, 1 away from her mom is where it ended.
Oh yeah, and now she's 3 ahead of her mom.
Yeah,
as a freshman, halfway through the season.
That's incredible.
She is on fire right now.
Yep.
Her OPS, which is a combination of average and batting and on base percentage, that kind of stuff, is over 1,300 right now, which is insane. That means she's basically getting on base and scoring 1.3% of the time.
It's incredible.
I mean, it's just dumb. Like, it's crazy. So, I mean, they've been really good. Our pitching staff has not been as good this year as it was last year with Kelly Maxwell and Nicole May and some of those players. But our pitching staff still has a cumulative 1.99 ERA. So we're not even giving up 2 runs per 7 innings. It's insane. Going into SEC play is going to be tough because the top 4 teams in the national rankings are all SEC teams.
Yeah.
Florida and Texas had a battle this past weekend, and Texas won 2 out of 3 of those. So Florida jumped out of the top 3. LSU moved into the top 3. But, I mean, I believe the SEC still has like 7 of the top 10.
Incredible.
I mean,
we got to play them all.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's not even fair. So, just now final. OU wins 8-0 in run rule fashion over East Texas A&M.
27-0
with the combined. So the combined no hitter. I think it's a combined. Yeah, it's a combined no hitter.
Nice.
And so Isabella Smith got the win. Started. Peyton Monticelli came in, finished it out, cleaned it up. But man, OU softball. As much as I've said, they're not the OU softball that we know.
They might be better.
They're still OU softball.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. I mean right now, all things are pointing that they're better so far this season. Yeah, like you said, we're not in SEC play yet, but still, you know what? I know this is easier. It's easier to have this attitude when you're playing like these girls are. What I really recognized in both of those games I watched over the weekend was how much fun they were having between pitches.
Yeah, and softball is a completely different monster. It's crazy. I coached softball back in the day with my daughter, and they have all the little chants in the dugout and all and it annoyed. Sorry, Mom, it annoyed the hell out of me, but it drove me crazy. But they have a chant for everything.
Yeah.
But to see the amount of fun they're having and all their little hand signals, every time someone catches a pop fly, they give a hand signal to like 8 different players on the field, and every one of them's different, and it's crazy. But they are having fun. It did take them a little while to kind of get into that. Last year was crazy. Like the team last year was, I mean, like the Roughnecks for football, just over there, just yelling and screaming at everybody every time, going crazy.
Yeah.
But it's been really fun to watch. I mean, Patty has come out and said multiple times this is one of her toughest coaching jobs in a long time, because obviously we lost 6 players last year that played college softball for 4 years and never didn't win a national championship. There's not a whole lot of coaching you have to do there. You're like, go play. Right now,
do what you did last week.
We're a team that's like 87% made up of freshmen and sophomores.
That's right.
And if this team can go win the national championship, we may end up on a 6, 7, 8 year run.
Yeah.
As national champions. I don't expect that, because that's really hard to do. 4 was crazy hard to do, but I mean they're closing in on it for sure, and they're making some of these other teams realize that we may be babies, but we're still king.
Only about a third of the way through the season. So this back 2/3 is going to be really proving for this team for sure.
Okay. How did they split the SEC? Do you know? Because it doesn't look like we play everybody. And then after this Missouri trip coming up quick, there's going to be a stretch of 4 teams that we play that aren't in the SEC. We'll have UCF, St. Thomas, UT Arlington, and Oklahoma State. And then there's only 4 more SEC teams that will play after that, because these series are, 3 games long. But
yeah, I'm not sure. So there ends up being 7 SEC series, because we've already played 2. We have the one at Missouri this weekend, or the one with Missouri this weekend, because we played South Carolina and Arkansas. We have Missouri this weekend. Then you're right. We do have a weekend where I think we're going to a classic, and there's several teams in this classic that we got to play, which is fairly normal. I'm not sure how they've broken it up, because I think there's either 13 or 14 teams that play softball in the SEC. I don't think all of them do, but I think there's 13 or 14 teams in the SEC. So maybe we're playing half of them this year, and then we do the other half next year, or we play the opposite of home and away that we did this year with the 7 that we're playing, and then 2 years from now we start playing the other teams. I'm not sure how that works out. It's crazy the way it works out, because I feel like in football and in softball we kind of got the shaft when it came to scheduling this year. And obviously we know why we feel like that way in football, but in softball, I mean, we're playing, I believe, 5 of the top 10 teams in the country in series in softball right now.
Yeah, well, to finish the SEC season, we are at home with Texas and then on the road to Florida. So
right, which is number 2, and Florida had been number 3 or better the whole season until they lost 2 to Texas.
And they're still number 4. But then they also have Mississippi State, who's still number 19 in the country, and then Alabama, who's number 24 in the country. So it doesn't get easy. I mean, I was just curious what that split would be as things get more difficult for them as they enter into, the conference play or what that tournament will look like.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I expect it to kind of be like football where after this year, we know who we're playing next year. It's just a matter of being on the road or home, opposite of what it is this year. And that's kind of what I expect. And then the following season, we'll play the other teams in the SEC, but I don't know that for a fact.
Gotcha.
Well, we'll this time next week, we'll be to the 16, Sweet 16 basketball?
Sweet 16, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be Sweet 16 talk.
All right. We'll look forward to run over that, seeing what picks you guys made it through in your brackets and if I made any money or not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's not I feel like I say every week, there's not a ton to talk about, but the stuff there is to talk about is really good right now.
Really fun, yeah.
Softball and the NCAA tournament, all the madness happening right now. But guys, you know what they say, right?
The weekend is good.
The midweek is always better.
And boom goes the dynamite.